gonna be on a call. They're gonna call him when we enter closed session, let him listen.
He says he's gonna be watching it on YouTube. Let him have fun. What are those requirements? We kind of order those for next year, we're gonna do it outside of this year. Probably so.
Never mind.
Already? Let's meet in order. Everybody please rise for our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you all for coming out on this cold morning. Get this going. First up, we have our amendment and approval of the draft agenda. We need to consider to cancel the February 18th meeting due to the lack of agenda items. We need to also consider to remove closed session with our legal attorney, whom has no updates for the council. So that would come off there at the end of them are closed. And also want to remind the town of the town meeting this Saturday from 10 to 1.
And stormwater,
Yes, and also
just pulling the stormwater.
in our
item off.
presentation, stormwater program update, due to a death, we will not have that. Our guy will not be here to put that on the information today, so we'll try to pull that up at another time to be set here shortly. Now, amendment and approval of draft agenda.
I move we approve it as
Second.
amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No opposed. All right. Council discussion.
I've got an item that I'd like to discuss. I sent via Lisa some ideas to think about how to simplify the Cabana program. And it's not so much that we take a vote on it, but it's to have Hiram, as he's working through the ordinance, to keep this in mind as options. The idea is, I was trying to think of, how do we actually manage this program? How do we, the staff, manage the program? How do the vendors manage the program? How does the public deal with the program? And with that, all I could come up was simplify, simplify, simplify. So based on revised counts by John Farrell and by DPW, and I think Fire Department, Deputy Chief Adams participated also, we came up with a number of about 300 to 310 cabanas being the capacity, rather than the 360 we were talking about before.
I have a question about that. Are you counting spaces beyond the 40th Street walkover?
I can answer that one. I know that Deputy Chief Adams and Mr. Graham did go about 10 extra cabanas past 40th Street to still be within the city limits. And not all the way to the city limits, but just because I know a few people do setups, so they did include a few of those, but not all of the available space.
I'm just concerned about the conservation land that's,
It didn't go
yeah.
down that far.
okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the simplification, we were talking about a 60-40 split. We're talking about 180 cabanas being allocated for vendors. In terms of simplification, my thoughts were knock it down to 150 cabanas at a max, and let, as we had decided last time, issue one permit per 10 cabanas. So this would only be 15 permits that we would be issuing, and then limit each vendor to a max of 3 permits, based on sort of discussions here and previous discussions. It seems that just about the max that any vendor was doing in the past was about 30 cabanas. I really can't substantiate that, but that seems to work. The second part of that was to just not regulate exactly how they get allocated. If we knock it down to 150 cabanas, the normal course of business with renting them to houses. Majority of them, I think, are rented to houses on the island, spreads them out. And so that would sort of be a self-limiting process. So I just don't think that we need to try to go down and have a requirement where we're counting and measuring how many vendor cabanas versus how many private cabanas are up with each access way. You know, if it becomes a problem in the future, we can always adjust that. But I think at the beginning, to get going, simplify. And so let the natural course of people ordering cabanas and being spread out over most of the island drive the process. And so my idea is just to give Hiram that kind of a guidance to make sure that's kind of worked into the revisions to the ordinance that he's trying to come up with is for us to consider in February. And you know, we don't have to vote or anything, it's just kind of a consensus to have him think about that. And
Makes a lot of
you've had several days to think about it, so.
So
I
you're
did.
really reducing it to a 50-50 split,
A 50-50 split
right?
with 150 being the max,
Right.
rather than the previous would have
Right.
been 180 the max. So that reduces congestion,
I'm fine with that.
yeah.
The second point makes a lot of sense, John. I think that it is a self-limiting thing. People aren't going to want their cabanas set up far away from where they're staying, and they're obviously not going to be all staying in the same place. So that makes a lot of sense. My only comment about limiting to the 3 permits, I understand that we wouldn't want to have one vendor come in and buy them all up, which is, I suppose, why you'd want to limit it.
Yeah.
But at some point, some vendor may want more than others. I don't know that the 3 has to be a limiting. It could be staged that at some point during the season, if someone needs more or less, I guess we could, or more mostly, that we could be flexible with that somehow.
Would that be something that we put in policy or put in ordinance?
I probably wouldn't put that in the ordinance. I'd probably take a policy, even though right now the draft ordinance still has a permit period when we would start these permits for.
Right.
If there's any packages left over at the end of that period, they could just be free for all after that point.
That's
That-
what I
That
would-
doesn't really need to
yeah.
be written into the ordinance. The ordinance is still gonna say 150 vendor spaces max.
That makes sense to
So
me.
they
yeah.
can just come then and purchase the additional if they'd like.
Yeah.
We can do that policy-wise, not really ordinance-wise.
So that they'd all get a first crack and
Yeah.
take what they can up to 3, and then if there's anything left after
Right.
that. Yeah,
And
that
you're
makes
gonna,
perfect sense.
you're gonna specify or set up a sort of period of time that vendors can apply here.
Yeah, and we'll put that in the ordinance, so that we don't have to worry about that part of it.
Yeah.
But we can have the policy take a little bit of liberty with the max of 3. And what we can write into the policy is initially a max of 3 pending town administrator approval or something like that.
Yeah,
That way we don't have to worry about having to reconvene every time something like this happens.
yeah, that makes perfect sense, but, yeah, that makes sense
Yeah.
to me, yeah.
So the idea is for you to play with that in writing up your ordinance and policies.
And I've already got a draft, just so y'all know. I've sent it to the attorney, waiting to see if everything in there sounds, sorry, that's Tim Jackson with Palm Cove. To see if everything lines up with, what we're allowed to do based on our discussions. So until I hear back from him, I'll still tentatively want this on the February 3rd meeting. Just so y'all know, I should have a draft policy, or ordinance to you by that week. And I'll take into these revisions in there too.
In addition to those, which I agree with, both Mr. Corbett and Tom over here, should we consider potentially looking at limiting the maximum number of vendors? So just to keep it simple, and so we don't have 15 different vendors, limited to 5 or 6 vendors, something like that? Would that be a consideration you want to have?
I personally think, honestly, if you want my opinion on that there's not that many vendors coming in to do this in the first place. But the permitting number should maybe regulate that as well. I don't think 15 people are gonna come in and grab it. 'Cause I don't think 10 cabanas a week is gonna be enough for most of the initial grab. So I think it'll control itself, but we can still put a cap on that somewhere. But whether that's, I'd have to run that by the attorney
Okay.
Yeah.
to see if we're interrupting, free enterprise at that point.
I think that'll be kind of self-limiting too,
Okay.
actually, in the process.
But I can still ask the attorney if you want me
Yeah.
to.
You can ask him. and
Because
we'll
that's,
see.
it's an easy line to throw into the ordinance. That's not a hard part. It's
Yeah.
making sure we can. I'll ask.
All right, any more discussions?
Not for me.
Everybody's good? All right. Moving on to our presentations, we're skipping this.
Uh,
Good.
si-
Good,
si-
sorry.
Since you brought up Tim Jackson, do we have any update on the road out there, Hiram? What's going to happen with that?
They're having a meeting with DCM today at 10 o'clock. I'm sending Mr. Rademacher and Building Inspector Dills out there to meet with them. Mr. Dills is our CAMA LPO officer, and Todd's obviously the planner. But they're meeting with them at 10 o'clock, and I should hopefully have an emailed report to y'all about that this afternoon, or whatever they talk about. I don't know what decisions will be made or not. I do know they were trying to get an emergency permit from DCM Friday night. I was on the phone with their director from DCM about it. But I don't know what got resolved. I do know a few loads of rock came in over the weekend, just try to stabilize, but the county, when they removed that hydrant, they pretty much removed a lot of the land out there too, so I don't know what shape everything's in at this point. I've been trying to get a hold of Mr. Jackson all weekend and even informed him that we were in a council meeting right now, but he's still trying to get a hold, so, I'm gonna, if you don't mind real quick, I'm gonna text him, let him know who's coming to be at that meeting, who he can contact.
Fine.
But, that's all, I should hopefully have more information this afternoon.
Okay, thanks.
Should we take a 5-minute recess?
No, I'm
Or we'll
good.
just watch you text?
I'm sorry, you want me to step off?
All right, moving on to the presentations, the recycling program update and information with our finance director, Ms. Tara Drop.
Okay. So you all have in front of you a bunch of numbers. And the reason that we've done this is that Waste Industries, which is now Green for Life, has changed their price on us a couple times with recycling. So I wanted to give you all information as basically what I'm facing with this. There's more than just the cost from Green for Life. With the recycling, there's the invoices or mailings that we send out to the entire town, and then my time as well as Joanne's time up front in managing this whole thing. I did a rough estimate as far as personnel costs at around $5,000. That would be my time and her time in this. I didn't include the fact that throughout the entire year, we do have a customer service cost, because it is unbelievable how many calls we get about recycling throughout the entire year for scheduling and for carts and other things. So that is just a very rough estimate, and it's probably low. The invoicing and the application cost of where we send it out, because we send it out to the entire town to get as much participation as we can, that costs around $3,000 total. So those are the variable costs that go into this. The cost from Waste Industries has also become a variable cost, because they have changed it twice now in this year. So as you can see on this paper, they raised us at October 1st. Or no, they raised us before October 1st. That was last fiscal year. But then unknowingly, they raised us on November 1st. I knew about a week before it happened. I had no idea that that was going to happen, which completely threw off my estimates for covering the costs through the participants. Then I just got an email recently that they're going to change, and Alan actually met with Hiram, that they are going to change this again, that they're going to know a better idea of what our rate will be after March 2020. And that rate will change July 1st, which is also going to affect the current year, which is going to make the amount that we've basically so-called lost on this even higher than what my estimate is. So it looks like, because what we try to do is build in an administrative cost into what we charge the customers for Sunset Beach, which is still lower than what we pay, or what they would pay to Waste Industries if they did it on their own. Plus, we get the island gets the second, or the Saturday pickup every week. But I'm having a hard time estimating it because of the changes. So these are the numbers. Last year, for fiscal year 18-19, we were off by about $4,300, and this year, at least $5,000. So we do have options. We can keep it the same, but we are going to have to increase the amount to the customers considerably, because with the changing and everything else, it's going to keep changing. I mean, Alan basically told us that this is definitely a variable now going forward. So my estimate is that to break even, and that's without a cushion, the mainland would be 85 and the island would be 115, which right now we did mainland at 73 and the island at 95, which I went back through, and last year, for the fiscal year 18-19, it was 60 and 77. And our cost in July of 2018, our cost just to Waste Industries for the mainland was $50 a year, and for the island was $67 a year. So it really has increased quite a bit. So I put the options on here, the same. At doing that, it is possible that we will still come under. We will know the increase in March, and we can get closer figures in that, but it's not going to be exact. The other option we have is mandatory recycling for the entire town. So one option that we had looked into was adding the recycling fee to tax bills, like what the cost is. Currently, the county doesn't do that. It could be a possibility. We're waiting to hear back if that's a possibility, but it will come as a cost. If we just increased our tax rate for the amount of recycling, I got a number from Alan that would be approximately $407,000 for it to be covered completely through taxes, which would be equivalent to a 2.54 tax increase. And like I said, that figure right there only includes the amount that we pay to Green for Life, because a lot of the administration costs and all of the invoicing costs would be completely gone. It would just be the throughout the year customer service, because it would be everybody. So we wouldn't have to manage a spreadsheet of who's coming and who's going and who wants to add and stop and all of that part of it. And then the only other option we have is to stop the recycling program through the town and have the citizens do it on their own. The cost of that, as of this month right now, is $11.73 a month, which is $140.76 a year. And it's only bi-weekly recycling. That doesn't count in the summer the weekly pickup that we do, that we have a deal with for Green for Life right now. So those would be the downsides of that. So that's a lot of information. And are there any questions about this?
Is there commercial? Does this affect just property owners, private residences, or does it affect also commercial properties? How would they?
I don't think we're
impacted?
doing recycling for commercial properties, right?
I don't think so. I don't think.
Because I don't have a
GFL
different
will.
rate for that.
Yeah, no, this is just for the standard pickup for the pull-out carts. Most times when you do the commercial recycling, I think GFL requires a dumpster for that.
How do we figure that in the mandatory?
The commercial?
Mhm.
I think we didn't, this is just residential figures only. It's only,
Yeah, we're not handling the commercial properties.
they would pay for themselves, directly, would be my preference and opinion, but what Alan gave us was only what it would cost to currently pick up every household, like they do for just household. So, we can try to find that information out.
Do our commercial businesses recycle?
I'm not sure. I'm sure a few of them do. I see cardboard dumpsters, but that's probably about the extent of it.
What's
I
the
believe
appro-
that the deal we had with this, when all of this was going through, was just for the citizens, the residents, not for the commercial, because it varies so much for them because of the sizes of their containers and the different issues that they have.
What's the approximate percentage of people that are participating in the town?
About 1/5,
1/5, so about 20%.
right? So if we went mandatory, it's 4,994 properties that have homes on them. And right now, we have about 930 customers.
Does the Malin get a weekly pickup?
No,
In summer as well?
No.
no.
So is that?
I mean,
the re-
if it's,
Yeah.
isn't there something that does?
Well,
Doesn't everybody get recycling? Yeah, recycling is not weekly, just trash.
No, it's just bi-weekly.
The additional Saturday, or the Saturday weekly pickups during the summer is mainly for the island homes, but I believe a portion of the shoreline area also gets it.
So
So they
then
also
that's the-
charge that extra up fee as well. That's why the fees are different for mainland and island.
That's, yeah,
Right.
okay, that was my question. Okay.
It seems that even with their price rises, it's still more cost-effective for the residents to go through the town, have the town do the administration,
Mm-hmm.
and then, pay a higher fee.
Right.
I think most people recognize that the recycling business has changed dramatically over the last couple of years, and the costs have gone up.
To listen
Yeah.
to the
Sure.
representative, it's costing them more to also deal in recycling. Even at a larger volume, there's not a break. There's a minuscule break, but not enough, they're not seeing a break themselves at a higher volume. At least that's what we've been informed of, so.
So if we do the whole town mandatory.
It's the
and-
same.
And suck up the $407,000, it really does not get more cost-effective for GFL.
According to the representative, not really.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
The
No,
only thing that
because
makes
I
it-
actually asked for a number, because I was thinking that it would be a lower per customer per month, but it was basically the exact same.
The only thing
It
that
didn't
would,
affect.
the only thing it would really save on is administration, as Ms. Drop was saying, basically because they'd know all the accounts. There wouldn't be a variable account, wouldn't have to come in this year, drop off 30 extra containers, next year pull up 50 of them. So there wouldn't be a variable customer base.
The impact on the taxpayer's tax rate of paying the $8,000 that's now for administrative costs for the town, or even up to 10, whatever it happens to be, is significantly less than the 2.54% tax increase that would go with 407,000.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And just for clarity, we're not looking for any direction today. This is food for thought for moving into budget, moving forward.
Okay.
Just because there has been so many variables coming into it and kind of revisiting it and showing you where the program stands, because it was basically set before. And then when Waste Industries' contract had ran out with who they were using, that's when all these variables started. So this is just so that you have this information showing you where we stand with this. And if anybody asks you why our costs are rising, it's because, or why their price is rising, it's because our cost is rising. So, are there any other questions?
One more.
Yes.
Do you have any compelling reason why we should change the way we do it now?
No. It's not easy to manage, but that's the only downfall for us. Is it is hard to track and keep up with, and the mailing costs a lot, and we've had customers or citizens that don't think that we've notified them quite good enough, and so I mean, there's not really a big issue or reason to change, other than the fact that we don't know what the cost is going to be for us going forward, and that we are going to have to eat some of it, most likely.
We can-
Sorry, real quick. You mentioned the mailing. Is that built into your figures for administrative costs? Because I know this past
I
year,
did it separate, the invoicing, the applications, that mailing.
but I mean, just moving forward though, are we going to bank on mailing out to every citizen like we did this last time? So that's
Yeah.
all built into that 115 and not, okay.
Which that definitely could change.
Yeah, I mean, postage can go up
Yeah.
when you're mailing out to 6,000 properties.
But the good thing is that it is still less than if they had to go out and do it on their own. So $140 versus $85, there's still a considerable saving.
I don't have any more questions.
That's it?
No, I'm good.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you so much. Moving on next, this is our public comments on agenda items only. Would anybody like to come up to the podium? All right, we don't have any, so we'll move on. We'll go to old business, the dredging project liaison discussion.
As mentioned at the last meeting, previous council selected two participants to be involved in dredging meetings and things like that. So if y'all want to consider an additional member as well as Ms. Harris, that's up to y'all. But we put it on here just for your consideration.
I'd like to volunteer for it, actually.
Actually, I think it should be our mayor, quite frankly. The mayor and a council member.
Well, I kind of like the idea of Tom doing it. We're going to keep piling things on to the mayor as time goes on, but
I would like to nominate Jamie Phillips then, if that's the way you want to put it.
well, my view
He has
is-
experience on the water, he has background in this. I think he would make an excellent liaison.
Yeah. Well, Tom has volunteered. Jamie, do you want this job?
At this point, I would support Tom.
All right, we'll call for a vote. Do I have a motion?
I move that we nominate Tom Borman for the second representative as dredging project liaison.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay?
You got that?
I'd just like to, make a point. The dredging representatives are council people, representatives of the town. The town has gone through a deliberative process to determine that we want the variance. And so I just remind you that the town policy is we want the variance. And so that should be kept in mind in the course of attending these meetings. I don't know what public participation either of our representatives has during the course of those meetings.
None.
But,
Understood.
All right. Moving on to the next, to the new business, assistance to firefighters grant. Chief Paul Heisemeyer.
Good morning. This, before you in the staff report is similar to what we requested last year. Well, the same grant, the FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant application. It's a competitive process. There's different priorities. Last year's grant, we applied for some equipment and training and made it to the end of the process, but ultimately didn't get funded. So this is that same grant. It's a 5% match. The equipment, I'm hopeful that we're going to have a better chance at getting, and as a FEMA priority is before you. And if you guys support me writing the grant, I will. And hopefully we get funded.
just a question there, is the 3750 town 5% match, is that already worked into your operating budget, or is that something we would have to increase or discuss You know, it's not a big amount, but will we discuss that in the budget cycle?
Yeah, if we're funded for this grant, we're gonna, it'll be within our operating budget next year. Or the one we're gonna be funding. I'll move some things around depending on that.
This won't get let out, and so we can go ahead and budget in an additional $4,000 next year during budget time, just in case if it does happen. If it don't get the grant, then that 4,000 could just wash back into a general fund.
Any more discussion on that?
Just
What were
curious
your
how,
th-
go ahead, no.
What were your thoughts about, what type of equipment would you want to use this for?
This is for hydraulic tools, extrication tools for vehicle and machinery rescue. And the tools we currently have are, they're still serviceable, but we're starting to put a little bit more money in. There's greater technology, but they're around 10 years old. And so just having some foresight to try to seek some grant funding before we have to replace them.
Okay, thank you.
How many of them do we have now?
There's gas-powered ones on one engine at Station 1, and then the original battery-powered hydraulics at Station 2 on that engine there, so.
So we basically keep one at each station to be available, and you generally would have an idea whether you need the extrication tool when you get the call. Is that?
Depends on the information we're given at time of dispatch, but
Yeah.
for vehicle crashes and rescue scenarios, those trucks are going.
Well, I think it's a good deal to go for the grants, and 5% cost to the town would be very inexpensive and well worth the money.
I agree.
All right, so we're gonna look for a motion to direct Chief to write and apply for the grant for the upcoming application period. Do I have a
So move.
Have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next up, we have the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors appointee.
As I brought up last time, Chamber of Commerce is looking for us to send someone. It can be y'all, it can be me, it could be another staff member. I think currently they're sending staff members, right? Other communities are. I'd have no problem going. The only conflict that we'll have is that it's the same day as this meeting is every month, but it's at 8 o'clock. So I maybe just teeter in a little bit past 9. But I'd be happy to do it, so, you know.
Is there a benefit, you versus, say, the mayor?
I can't really think of a benefit other than, I mean,
Benefit would be I'd be here to start the meeting instead of being late.
You know, we could probably get the meeting over before you got back, you know, so, something to consider.
I would personally rather decision makers being here than not. And I know he's not technically a decision maker, but he still has to break
Yeah.
a tie and all that, but, it's up to y'all. I think the benefit for us as a community is just being able to participate a little bit more, understanding it more, and maybe bring some of those resources down this direction.
I'm fine with you going here, Hiram.
Me too,
Me three.
4.
1, 2, 3, not it?
yeah.
We'll
Aye.
somebody make a motion.
I move that we nominate Town Administrator Hiram Marziano to be the Chamber of Commerce Board appointee.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed.
Thanks.
Next up, the deposition of directives for our February 3rd, 2020. Let's see.
I think, are we going to be ready to add in consideration of the Cabana ordinance?
Yeah,
On the 3rd of February?
We'll put the command, I think it could be fine for the 3rd meeting. Also, the stormwater program, can we move that to the 10th?
That being said, on the 10th, what we talked about is on the 18th, we only have one thing on the agenda right now. With us coming in on the 10th, having that meeting scheduled for the 10th, our budget at 10, I want y'all to consider maybe canceling the 18th meeting and moving it back to the 10th at 9 o'clock. That'll give us the time before there. That's up to y'all. What do y'all think about that?
Does that affect any of the advertising that we've done?
No, the deadline will still be before that date.
I'm comfortable with deciding the planning board member on the 10th.
I'm fine.
So you're saying that we would move the council meeting to the 10th?
Instead of having the 18th, we would move it to the 10th. We meet on the 10th that's our first budget meeting.
Right.
So if we met on the 10th that morning at 9, instead of, 10 o'clock is our scheduled meeting. If we met at 9, we could handle the council business right before then, instead of coming back on the 18th. That's what we're looking at, 'cause we only have one item really right now at all.
For the
And we
18th?
could easily move that, yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I'm good with that.
Work for you, sir.
I'm good with that.
We'll need a motion for y'all to establish
What-
that meeting.
Now, there was also a budget meeting planned for the 18th, right?
No, the
That
10th.
was on the 10th.
That was on the
That's
10th.
what we moved it back.
Oh,
where
okay,
we could
okay.
get it all
okay.
done while we was here that day,
I got it.
with
Okay,
us not having much things on the agenda,
okay.
okay?
Yep.
All right, can we have a motion on that?
So moved?
Have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That puts that meeting on the 10th, there'll be a regular scheduled council meeting, the second meeting, correct?
Yep. And we'll just cancel the one on the 18th.
The planning board's been discussing gates for private property. Is there anything coming before the council?
Yeah, your public hearing is set for the 3rd. I don't think it made it to the discipline.
Oh, is that what Article 7? No, that's fences.
Well, it still falls under Article 7.
Okay, so, oh, is that fences?
That's
Is
it,
that
yeah.
what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
And we said on the 210, we would go to the planning board vacancy, we would take care of that on the 10th, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
yes.
And the stormwater.
Yes, sir.
So those two items, and then we'll go into budget after that.
Okay. I don't have anything else.
Anything else? Nobody else?
Nothing else?
All right, public comments on anything? Does anyone need anything? All right, we're gonna get a motion to go into closed session.
So moved?
Second,
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.